Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. When was the last time you felt genuine, acute fear? Please remember to like, share, hype, ask and listen for shoutouts, and subscribe. One night I got into bed with my girlfriend and suddenly started coughing up blood. I ran to the bathroom, gripping the sink, just trying to stay upright. Every breath I took, more blood came up. By the time the ambulance arrived, I'd basically accepted that this was it, that I was going to die right there. Then out of nowhere it started slowing down, and finally stopped by the time I reached the ER. Turns out it was Hodgkin's lymphoma. Went through 6 months of chemo, and came out the other side cured. Thankfully, with the barely any lasting effects, easily the scariest experience of my life. 2 weeks ago, in the same week, my mother-in-law, dad, and mom all got diagnosed with cancer. My dad is now dead, my mom had hers removed, and we're waiting on the prognosis for my mother-in-law. 3 days after this started, my husband got some weird symptoms, and now he's been tested for the same cancer his mom has. So anyway, my anxiety is going haywire, and I'm so scared everyone around me is going to die. The most acute fear I've felt in my life, that nothing has come close to touching, is when I took a ton of sleep aids, I think Unisom, thinking it would just cumulatively knock me out longer. Instead, I woke up feeling like my brain was short-circuiting. It felt like I was watching myself become permanently brain damaged in real time. My thoughts were skipping on repeat. Oh my god. Realize I'm losing my mind. Realize I already thought that. Oh my god. I realize I'm losing my mind. Realize I already thought that. Oh god. Reset. I couldn't move and couldn't speak. I thought I was going into a locked-in vegetative state, except it wouldn't be dreamlike nothingness. It would be eternal panic. Watching my 9-year-old daughter's heart stop the night after her 4th heart surgery. Her pacemaker leads weren't connecting correctly because of all the scar tissue. Telling her to fight and to stay with us. Seeing the exact same fear on my husband's face. Having them escort us out to the waiting room and calling a chaplain to sit with us while they were preparing the room to do emergency open heart surgery at her bedside. Trying to read the surgeon's face when he came in to see us after. She needed another heart surgery the next day, and she's doing well now, but even thinking about it a year later causes the hair on my neck to stand up again. Received a call from my son's school to say that a rope got tied round his neck in the playground and he was strangled for a few seconds. The teacher did not open with that small fact, nor the fact that he was fine, just went straight in with a grave tone that my son had been strangled in an accident. For those few seconds, my world stopped. Last year, I was snorkeling in Hawaii with my wife and son. Everything's going great, and then I feel a weight start pulling me under the water. My son had taken water into his snorkel and started panicking and pulling me down with him. Now, he was 17 at the time, taller than I am, so imagine an out-of-shape 40-year-old trying to keep 2 grown men afloat and nothing nearby to grab onto. Fortunately, there were some people not too far away, so I only had to struggle for about 5 minutes before we were escorted to safety. But I thought both my son and I were going to drown, and if those folks hadn't been there, we probably would have. When we were brought ashore, I had to lay there for several minutes, completely out of breath and unable to move my arms or legs because they had gotten so worn out. When my son was ill as a toddler and in a lot of pain, it turned out to be something completely harmless and manageable, but those hours waiting for the diagnosis, holding his hand and trying to reassure him, telling him how brave he was, as he screamed and told me he wasn't brave and please make it stop, I never knew I was capable of feeling that scared or lost. He's 13 now and doesn't even remember it happening. But it was the most terrifying 24 hours of my life. My hands are shaking as I type, just from the distant memory of it. A little over a year ago, my soon-to-be ex-husband and I got into a disagreement. It escalated in the blink of an eye, and suddenly I was pinned underneath him on the floor. At some point he started to choke me, but I managed to wiggle free to crawl out of my watch to call 911. It didn't work, and he ripped the watch off my wrist. That's when I really started to panic. He had me pinned again, so I headbutted him to try to get him off. But he just smashed my face into the floor. I managed to get free and run for the door, screaming for help, but he caught me and I was 100% sure I was going to die right then and there. My body gave out. I collapsed, totally spent. I've genuinely never in my life been more scared than I was of him in that moment. Lucky for me, he got spooked when I screamed for help and practically dragged me from the apartment lest the cops show up and ask questions. I left him 2 months later with the help of some friends. Several months ago, when I was in my first major car accident, traffic was stopped on the interstate. Semi-truck behind me did not stop. The semi shoved the first car of the trailer of the truck in front of it. The car flipped into another lane. I heard that initial crash behind me and knew what was coming. Could see in the rearview mirror what was about to happen, but couldn't do anything about it. The semi kept going onto the trailer of the truck, which shoved my car, a compact sedan, into and underneath the SUV in front of me, which hit another truck. I made it out with only bruises, but I don't know if anything will ever compare to hearing the sound of the first crash, seeing the trucks coming for my car, and then being underneath an SUV. It's taken me several months to get to the point where I'm not constantly listening for sounds of impact or terrified of the idea of a semi anywhere near me. Young but big Irish draft horse crushing me up against the door of her stall because she heard a group of other horses passing on the road outside our yard. Never enough a metric ton of horse crushing my chest against a thick, heavy, 100-plus-year-old chunk of oak door. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't call out. Seriously thought I was going to die. It was totally unexpected. She was new, and because she was generally sweet-tempered, we hadn't yet realized that she had been taught zero manners or respect for human personal space. Fortunately, the horses outside were moving quickly and were out of earshot a few moments later, so she calmed down and let me push her back. An ex shoved me onto a hardwood floor and then stomped me in the head with his heavy-duty work boots. He kicked me a few times after that, and anytime I tried to get back up, he'd kick me again. I was forced to lay there completely still, fully naked by the way, for what felt like hours while he said the worst possible things one could ever say to another. I figured that was going to be it. I was already seeing stars and going in and out of consciousness. I lost all hope in that moment. That was almost 5 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day. I made it out though, thank God. Ah, humans. Heard my mother calling my name from the other room in panic. Thought I forgot to do something to make her angry and went there to see her passed out on the floor face down. She was having a seizure. She got a black eye because she fell down on her face, and blood was coming out of her mouth because she bit her tongue hard. Put her in the recovery position and opened her jaw and put my index finger between her teeth so that she doesn't choke on her own spit. Couldn't reach my phone, so I screamed for my brother and he came down running and called the emergency line. At the hospital, they checked her brain, and after a while the assistant asked me if she had some traumatic experience recently. Knew then and there it was definitely a tumor in her brain. I was right. After a week of scans and tests, they told us it was meningioma, which is relatively easier to operate on than other types of tumors. It was 3 centimeters wide, so even if it was relatively easier, it was still very dangerous. It was also right at the time of COVID, so brain surgery was extra dangerous. Luckily, the operation was successful and she made a full recovery and only left with a slight dent on her head. I sometimes jokingly ask her if the doctors filled the hole left from the tumor with caulking. I'm super happy she's still with us and still has the same sense of humor to laugh with me. Financial issues and rising housing prices have pushed me out of the home city to a trailer about 30 to 45 minutes south of it. I got home from work one day, crappy day. I made a stiff drink and popped an edible. It was overcast and I could hear thunder in the distance, but no rain or wind, and I didn't think to check the weather. Apparently there were two massive storm cells, one just a smidge north of me and one just south, and I was in a small alley about a mile wide between them. As the gummies kicking in, every device in the house turns red and starts blaring. Imminent danger, seek shelter. One of the cells had spun a funnel cloud out into the mile-thick alley I was in. I pulled up a radar and saw just how precarious my situation was. And because of the nature of that calm alley, the funnel was perfectly visible right there. A hook of red coming out of one cell, about half a mile away, and closing on me. A friend of mine calls. Am I in shelter? No. Can I get to a shelter? No. Are you okay? No. Do you want me to stay on the line? Please. Then I heard it, like a semi-truck. I told my friend I didn't know what was about to happen, but that I was going to let him go in case it was bad, because I didn't want him to hear if it was. Luckily, it ended up passing overhead and never developing into anything. When my daughter was a newborn, we had to feed her a certain way or else she would choke. We were trying out new baby bottles, which led her to start choking on the milk. She began to go blue, and I immediately started to back blow up her shoulder blades. She went unresponsive, so I was preparing to start CPR as my husband called an ambulance. A good old sternum rub got her crying, and thankfully she was okay afterwards. Though it was only a few seconds, it felt like forever, and as if I was going to lose my child. Thankfully, we lived next door to a fire station, and they still came out to do a quick assessment of her, though transport to the hospital was no longer necessary. Hey guys, first of all, happy Halloween to all those celebrating today with friends or family or ghouls and whatnot. I want to give a shout out to On the Road Go Jim Bro. I think that's what it was. That's a pretty cool screen name. And yeah, sorry for the occasional yawns here and there. But you know, life. But I'm glad you guys are doing well. Hope you have a wonderful, safe and happy weekend. Talk to you guys soon. My sister was in a deep state of terrifying psychosis from January to August of this year. She was talking to people that weren't there, seeing things that weren't there. It was horrifying to witness. She somehow got it into her mind that I was messing with her and her home. I'd receive random texts all the time from her threatening me. I wouldn't respond because I was afraid it would only feed her delusions. One morning I was awoken with her coming into my bedroom at about 7 a.m. My dog was barking his head off at her. She came in and slammed the door behind her and stood in front of the door glaring at me. I had fallen asleep with my glasses on and sat up, asking her, "What's up?" trying to remain calm. She wouldn't answer me. I asked her what was up about 9 times. Finally, she responded and said, "Oh, you're just in here asleep, huh?" Like she wasn't believing I had been. I said yes, I was. She finally responded, "Oh, okay, I'll let you go back to sleep then." As she turned and opened my door and slammed it shut so hard behind her that she broke the bells hanging on the knob. I stayed in a continued state of constant fear for 8 months. I never knew what to do or expect from her because she was so dangerous and highly unpredictable. I did nothing but watch my windows and cameras all day every day. I was afraid to stay home or to leave. I tried every way I knew how to get her some kind of mental help. I failed. She committed suicide on August 14th, 2025, by gunshot wound to the head. I was the one to call for a welfare check on her. I'm a brain cancer survivor, and I spent 6 months doing chemotherapy for a brain tumor. Most miserable experience of my life. Then at the 3-quarter mark, had an MRI to see if I were on track. The parasitic lump of bone in my brain was larger. Oh, and it was 9 years old at the time. Yeah. Finding out that the treatment for your brain tumor didn't work is terrifying. Are you gonna die? I mean, probably. Needless to say, I did die, and was sent to the innermost circle of hell known as middle school. Also, needless to say, Despite this being the most traumatic event in my entire life, I still joke about it because I'm in control. The event affected me, but I'm in control. My 4-year-old wasn't in her bed in the middle of the night and was frantically running through the house screaming her name and feeling the most intense fear I've ever felt in my life. Found her sound asleep, buried under a pile of blankets and pillows on the couch. She made herself a little den in the middle of the night and gave us a horrible scare. We had a long talk about not doing that ever again. Well, we talked in the morning. I spent the rest of the night just sobbing from relief that she was safe. I woke up feeling like crap about a year ago and thought it was just a hangover. Puked a few times, but mustered up to take my kid to ballet class. Came home, crashed out in even worse pain, and started rolling like a hot dog at 7-Eleven trying to find a comfortable position. And then my hands started to fold up in a weird position and I couldn't move them. Turns out, that's a thing that can happen when you have gallstones. Made it to the ER, got some pain meds. Whatever inflamed my gallbladder passed on its own, but whew, that was kind of terrifying. I was out wildlife spotting with some friends in Wyoming a few weeks ago. It was a half-mile hike up the steep hill from the car. We were entirely alone, and we'd all had a few seltzers. As we were getting ready to go, someone turned around and said, "There are grizzly bears behind us." We laughed because he said it so calmly. He said, "No, really, look." It was a mother bear and 2 cubs barreling down the next hill. They were coming right for us. I never ran faster in my life. The whole time I was focused on not tripping down the hill, not throwing up, and not being the last person to the car. In retrospect, we had bear spray, but had completely forgot about it. Fight or flight, I guess. It was the biggest adrenaline rush of my adult life, though. My first apartment. Somebody was jiggling the bedroom window. I was only living there 3 days with no furniture. All I had was a mop, clothes, and my mattress on the floor. I broke the mop in half and waited. I didn't even think to give a warning. Dude was just stealing my screen for his own window. He thought my apartment was still empty. He had to destroy his because he locked his keys inside. I gotta say, he was gonna get it if he got in. No smartphones back then. I was scared shitless. It happened at night. I was in my underwear. April 1st and September 27th of this year, my life has had to be fearless. Had to raise my siblings, whose fathers walked out. I denied myself any emotions, fear, and elsewhere because I held so much responsibility on my shoulders that buckling wasn't an option. But this year, those 2 dates, my partner went into a coma due to health problems, and I felt fear for the first time, and it felt like my heart was ripped from my chest. The first time caused me a heart attack because of the stress of that and other things. The last time I was 2 nights ago. I have no idea what the fuck happened. I was laying in bed trying to sleep, and this chill gripped my heart. It started pounding, and tears came to my eyes. I started shaking and looking around frantically. I cried myself to sleep. I was so afraid and didn't know of what. Literally nothing changed around me, but I immediately identified that feeling as fear, which I haven't felt for a while. The time before that was last November, when my mother called me to tell me that my 13-year-old sister was hospitalized for a Tylenol suicide attempt that September, the same way I had tried to end it when I was 17. I felt like the worst person in the world and genuine fear that she should die. I was so scared of what she was going through because I know how hard it was for me. The times before that were too many to count in such a short period of time. I'm lucky to not suffer in that way anymore. It was 3:30 a.m. I was up watching a show in the dark. I live in a studio, so my front door is like 7 feet from me. I hear metal on my screen door and rattling outside like someone trying to get in. I sit in fear for a second and think, I don't want to die. Bolt up, grab my hammer conveniently on my coffee table, turn all the lights on and the porch light on and yell, "Hey!" because that's all I could courage. I stand by the door with my hammer in my hand, silent tears, legs shaking, wearing just a big shirt, heart beating out of my chest. Ring camera wasn't working. I text my family and my ex about what's happening, considering telling them I love them. It's silent. I sit on my bed, still crying, still shaking, facing the door. My neighbor texted me he's so sorry. He was looking for his spare key. I had COVID back when it was new and basically a death sentence according to the media. I lived alone across the state from all my family and friends. I got very short of breath while taking a shower and started panicking. I remember standing in the living room about midnight, deciding if I should go to the ER to die or stay home and die. I felt like the only person on earth. I packed stuff to take with me as if I'm going to the hospital to die. I've never felt so isolated and close to death, although I wasn't really. ER just took my O2, said I wasn't going to die, and sent me home. I didn't die.